This is a copy of a painting by William Orpen that's in the Imperial War Museum, is that right?
That's right.
And who is it?
The story is quite interesting because it started off by being called The Spy.
Aha.
And then he changed his story and called it The Refugee. But then it turned out that it wasn't either of those.
This is wartime?
This is during the 1418 war, I think in 1918.
Because he was an official war artist, wasn't he?
That's right.
Yes.
And he was doing a job, and he sort of slipped this one in. And it turned out it was his mistress, and she was called Yvonne Aubicq, I think was the name. And he got into a lot of trouble over this because he'd been doing a little bit of private work when he was supposed to be doing war work.
He would have got into trouble over calling a picture a spy in 1918 because that subject was very, very sensitive. The French had just shot Mata Hari, remember? And the Germans had executed the English spy, Edith Cavell.
That's right.
And it was a very sensitive area. And the idea that Orpen might be working privately for himself, painting a portrait of his mistress, well, you know, it was all very sensitive, and he would have got into a lot of trouble with the official censor over it. Every picture that was painted by an official war artist had to be passed by the British Army censor. So he would have got into trouble. Having got into trouble, he then might have liked to have tried to find a way out of it. And in fact, he did have to pull on his extensive connections to get himself reinstated. He had to go back to England to explain himself and then get sent back to France. But the finished picture ended up in the Imperial War Museum. And the question is, what is this? I mean, it's got an interesting inscription, hasn't it?
I know, yes. And how genuine do you think that is?
It's quite Da Vinci Code, isn't it? Because we've got copy by someone unknown.
Yeah.
And that provokes a mystery. But then this thing that says Mailiu Nipro sounds Hungarian or something. Anyway, leave that aside for one moment and consider the picture. How good is it?
I think it's fantastic.
Well, I have to say I agree. Now, this is very important, and we'll come back to it, and why it's so good. The inscription, we read it backwards. It says William Orpen.
Yes, I know.
Aha, right, you know. Well, I think that this really is by William Orpen.
You do?
Yes, I do. I don't think it's a copy by someone unknown. I think that's rather an arch and rather knowing way of saying it's a joke, you see. He knows he got into trouble over it. It's now in the museum. Presumably the official censor claimed it as government property.
Yeah, and
that's
copyright
why it's
as
there.
well.
Copyright as well. But Orpen thought that he had this kind of sense of humour, you see, that he would slide past that rule and make something of the picture anyway. And I think this is the result.
Wow.
Now, why do I think that? Well, look at it. You're saying it's fantastic. I agree. I think the light in her eye is just brilliantly done. And the highlights in her hair they really work. And all this free work down here, it's so brief and yet so accurate and so wonderfully coloured. And the complexion of her face, the whole thing, and it's quite a lot larger than the original picture, isn't it?
Yes, twice the size, I think.
It's difficult to work up from that and still make a picture succeed. You know, often if it's a slavish copy, it becomes just a crude and over-amplified pastiche of the original. This is not that. This is something better.
Wow.
So
I'm all excited now.
Well, the thing is, in the 1418 war, he wasn't Sir William Orpen, the terribly important society portraitist that he later became. Nonetheless, he was a very sincere and very fine painter, and some of the most emotionally wrought and powerful pictures to come out of the First War are in the Imperial War Museum by him.
I've seen them, yes.
They're very powerful, aren't they? And he was regarded by his peers as a prodigious draftsman. He was very highly respected. No one can paint like him. And I think that's why it's possible to see his hand in this picture. You say it's fantastic. Well, it really is. And that's, to me, why it's by him.
All the time we've had it in our family, we've always assumed it was a copy.
It's a copy, but it's by him.
Yes, as you say.
So where does that leave us? If we can prove that it's by Orpen, presumably you didn't really value it.
No, not at all.
As such.
No.
No.
Certainly not.
20 to 30,000 pounds.
goodness gracious me is about the mildest thing I could say.
Well, perhaps that's better. We'll leave that in.
Yes, thank you.
Wow, what a find. And later in the series, there's even better news about that painting.